Well, as you can see, we're in our series on grace, and some of you can probably relate if you're, one of those people. There's just some people you play a game with, and you're like, I don't know if I want to end this game with them, because, sore losers sometimes, right? We're going to continue in this series on grace, and if you missed the first message, you can go back to our website, bethel.ag. You can check it out there. And today, I want to jump right in, and so if you like to take notes on the back of your worship guide, there's a spot for you to do that. But we're going to jump in. I want to open up with this quote, because I want to set kind of the conversation tone today, all right? So Gordon MacDonald, he says this, the world can do almost anything as well as or better than the church. You need not be a Christian to build houses, feed the hungry, or heal the sick. There is only one thing the world cannot do. It cannot offer grace. Man, I hope that sinks in. Because I think a lot of times as Christians, we want to do our good deed. We want to help out. And I believe that the gospel calls us to serve and meet people's physical needs. I really believe that. But what we have to understand is when we issue that love, that benevolence, that heart to say we're going to serve people. We have a team right now that's in Texas serving and ministering to kids that have been abused. So we believe in that. But if we don't couple that with the one thing as Christians that we have, with grace, we're missing it. We haven't separated ourselves. So we're going to dive a little deeper into this, and we need to get a greater revelation of grace. But we offer grace. Everybody say grace. And we need to do that. All right, so I'm going to share with you a few stories. They're parables. Some are accounts of what took place with Jesus in the New Testament. So if you want to grab your Bible, I'm going to reference these, but you can take some notes here. And I'm going to kind of highlight some of these stories or parables or accounts in the Bible that we see take place with Jesus. So he tells us a story about a lost sheep. Some of you are familiar with this story. Luke 15, verse 4, check it out, all right? What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? Now, this passage you're familiar with, but in my mind, if we look at it from the world's perspective, all right? So step outside the church, step outside of Christianity, and if you look at this, that doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up. How would you like to be the shepherd that goes after the one, you come back and you're missing another 20? Anybody else go, that's a bad day, right? That math doesn't add up. See, we think that's sacrificial, and that's amazing that the shepherd would do that. So what separates us and our perspective from what we can do with the rest of the world? It's grace. So just get that in mind, all right? So it sounds noble, but it could be some bad math, right? If you're looking from the world's perspective. The next story I want you to look at, I'm calling it Pricey Perfume. You might be aware of this story in John chapter 12. You can turn there real quick. John 12, verse 3. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus, wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, I love that little side note there, said, why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? Judas has got a great point. He really does. This sounds beautiful, but from the world's perspective, if we step outside of grace, we step outside of who we are under Christ, if we step outside of that, the reality is that's some bad math, because that's a year's wages that she just dumped on Jesus' feet. Anybody would like to take your whole salary this year and go ahead and pour it on the feet of Jesus? Don't be hyper spiritual on me. Don't be like, I would do it, Pastor. Come on, really? You're going to take your whole salary for the year. You're going to dump it on the feet of Jesus? The math doesn't add up, does it? It doesn't make sense. This is a depiction of grace, though. This is a depiction of what it is to serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You guys getting that with me? Everybody say yeah. All right. This is a year's wages. It's amazing to me. Now there's another story. It's called the widow's mite. And this is in Mark 12. All right, you can turn there. Mark 12, verse 41. And he sat down opposite the treasury. This is Jesus. And he watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums. And a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, This poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. Sounds sacrificial, but if we look at it from the world's perspective, it sounds like some bad math. The reality is that how is this grace? When we each get a revelation of the grace that we've received through Jesus, something compels us to want to serve the Lord and give everything that we have. If we're honest with ourselves, that's nothing easy to swallow. But when we truly get a revelation of it, we think, you know what, hey, I get out of hell, I have an eternity with Jesus, I'm still trying to figure all that out. That sounds nice. But there is an extravagant level of giving, not just financially, but with our hearts, that changes people's lives. It's not just going out and serving somebody. It's not just going out and helping some kids that are abused. It's not just going out and helping kids get great attendance down at General Beetle. It's not just going and putting a church in Edgemont. It's not just going to different places and doing things. If we don't walk with the grace that we've received, then we've missed the boat. Grace doesn't make any mathematical sense. It doesn't. And we struggle to understand that. There's some bad math if we're looking at it from the world's perspective. Now, there's another story. It's not talked about a lot, but you might be familiar with it. It's about a farmer who pays some workers. I want you to turn with me to Matthew chapter 20. And this farmer, he does some things. And I'm just going to read portions of it so we kind of get the context of the story, but I'm not going to read the entire story. But starting in chapter 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house. Let me pause there. Whenever you see the kingdom of heaven is like, we've talked about this in previous sermon series, but I want you to get that, all right? Whenever you see that in the Bible, you need to pause and reflect what is about to be said here, because you're gonna get a greater revelation of what the kingdom of heaven is like, what the character of God is like, okay? All right, so for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Verse 2, after agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into the vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to them he said, you go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give to you. Verse 6, and about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing, and he said to them, why do you stand here idle all day? Verse 8, and when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first. Verse 9, and when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. All right, now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more. You know, you just saw the people that got hired at the end of the day. They only worked a couple hours. You've been working all day. You're thinking, oh, it's payday. Yes. Right? I'm getting a bonus because they're getting paid what I was told I was going to get paid, right? Anybody else? I would be expecting that, right? So check this out. But each of them also received denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house. But he replied to one of them, friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the denarius? Am I not allowed to do what I chose with what belongs to me, or do you begrudge my generosity? This is an incredible story of grace. You know, it sounds unfair, sounds like some bad math. This master of the house, this farmer, has got some issues and he needs to go back to school and work on his abacus, all right? Doesn't have it figured out. I want to read you a portion from the book, What's So Amazing About Grace. And I mentioned this last week. If you've never read this book, I would encourage you to get your hands on it. It's by Philip Yancey. Incredible book about grace, all right? But I want to read you this portion. This is about the farmer story. Jesus' story makes no economic sense, and that was his intent. He was giving us a parable about grace, which cannot be calculated like a day's wages. Grace is not about finishing last or first. It's about not counting. Everybody say not counting. We receive grace as a gift from God, not as something we toil to earn, a point that Jesus made clearly through these stories and accounts. From the world's perspective, this situation looks like some very bad math. That's what it looks like. From the world's perspective, this is some bad math. From God's perspective, it's his grace. It's his grace. There wasn't an issue in this story until there was the scandal over the bad math. It was a scandal of mathematics that caused people to grumble and complain. Now, here's the deal. We as Christians, we often forget about the grace that we originally received. Come on, if we're honest with ourselves. And we get into people's lives and we go, what is wrong with you? What were you thinking? You're just abusing. What are you doing? And we forget about the grace and where we've come from. And we forget about that. We've got to come back to that over and over and over again. And I'm just being honest, as a pastor, when I meet people, I'm going, what were you thinking? What were you doing? And then I remember, oh yes, I'm a sinner saved by grace. Hello? I'm a sinner saved by grace. And when we come back to that revelation over and over again throughout the walk with Christ that we have, something shifts in us. And we begin to realize, I've got more than just $1 to offer. I got more than some service to offer. I've got some grace to offer. I thought that deserved a little bit more excitement than that. But I've got more than $1 to offer. I got more than some service to offer. I've got some grace to offer. All right. We're going to get this. Now, here's the thing. Some of us feel like, well, we got to be careful that we don't abuse grace. I understand that. We can't abuse grace. When we intentionally say, I'm going to dishonor the sacrifice of Jesus, I'm going to dishonor what he did for me and for you, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to intentionally do this act of sin or wrongdoing. Yeah, you're starting to abuse grace. But have you ever slammed your thumb with a hammer? Have you ever stubbed your toe? Have you ever had a fish on the back of your car and cut somebody off and tell them pretty words? And in the moment, you lose it, right? If we're honest about our emotions and our feelings, we can lose it at times. But guess what? If you didn't intentionally do that to harm the heart of God, there's some grace for you in that moment. But when you step into intentionality, says, I know this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway, you're abusing the gift of grace. But what I've discovered, and it took time for me to discover this. I don't feel like I got this true revelation of grace. I was been pastoring for 5 years before I got a true revelation of grace, I feel, to be honest with you. And when you get a real revelation of grace, something shifts inside of you, and you'll desire every moment, every day, Jesus, I don't want to dishonor what you did for me. I want to walk in your grace. I want to walk in your goodness. I want to walk in your obedience. See, grace doesn't force us into obedience. Did you hear what I just said? Grace doesn't force us into obedience. Grace causes us to desire to be obedient. I desire to be obedient to my Father in heaven because of what he did in sending his son for me. And you will never abuse grace, my opinion. You'll never abuse grace when you get a real revelation of it and the sacrifice of Jesus. But if you treat church and you treat Jesus just as a get out of hell free card, yeah, you might be stepping into abuse of grace. Grace is a gift. Didn't cost you a thing, but it cost him everything. I'm thankful for that grace. But I have to remind myself that if I want to build a house for someone, I better couple it with grace. If I want to feed somebody because they don't have enough food on their table, I better couple it with grace. I want to serve this community, I better couple it with grace. If you don't attach grace, you're no different than the world. And don't mistake when you add grace to a situation that you're condoning sin. Okay, don't mistake that. Those are two different things. But I'm a sinner saved by grace. I have no right to judge this person, But I'll tell you what, I'll tell them who Jesus is, and I'll tell them what Jesus did for me, and I'll tell them the walk they could walk in the life that would be changed if they'll do it. You know what I'm thankful for? God doesn't give gifts. I reversed that. God doesn't give wages. He gives gifts. You don't have to earn it. He gives you the gift. You don't have to clock in and clock out and try to get his grace. If we were paid based on our merit, we'd all end up in hell. Robert Capon says this: if the world could have been saved by good bookkeeping, it would have been saved by Moses, not Jesus. You don't want anybody keeping your books, promise. You don't want anybody keeping your books on your sin, your rights, and your wrongs, because it's never good enough. Because if it was, we'd be saved just through the law with Moses. I'm thankful for the law, but Jesus came to fulfill the law so that we might have grace and freedom and hope and forgiveness and grace. So here's what we're going to do today. I want you all to stand with me. I've been praying for this moment right here, right now for you. I've been praying for this moment because I believe as we've had this conversation, some of you need a greater revelation of his grace. I also believe that some of you are walking in a situation right now and you don't have the answers. You've turned everywhere you can turn. You've been to the doctors, you've been to here, you've been to there. You've been to the bank looking for a loan. You've been everywhere trying to get this situation figured out and fixed. And right now, you've got nothing left. And for you, what if you called on the grace of God in that moment? The grace of God over your body for healing. The grace of God over the situation of your finances. The grace of God over the restoration of your marriage. The grace of God over that wayward child that hasn't come back to church or to God. What if you asked for the grace of God? You called down the grace of God. Well, they don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. You're right, you don't. They don't either. It's grace. And we are going to go into worship for the next few moments. And we're going to turn the front of this room into an altar. And if you were here last week, we talked a little bit about that in our encounter service. But the altar is basically this. It's a place where you come and lay things down and you receive the grace and the forgiveness of God. That's what an altar was. And something had to be sacrificed. Something had to be laid down. You have to lay it down. That situation, it's time to lay it at the feet of Jesus. That circumstance, that healing, the provision, that relationship, it's time to lay it down at the feet of Jesus. We've made time in the service for this, so you're good. You're all right. You don't have to look at your watch, all right? But I'm going to pray. And I've been praying for this moment. I believe God is going to bestow upon you the grace that you never deserved, but he's going to give you his grace in a new revolutionary way. We're going to respond to it today. We're going to let him put it upon us today. So I'm going to begin to pray. And if you have a situation, a circumstance, a healing, a relationship, whatever it is, this is your moment to receive his grace. Father in heaven, right now, I thank you that you would send your son, that he would die on a cross for us, that he came to fulfill the law so that we might walk in grace. And Lord, I pray for every one of my friends right now that are struggling, that need you, God, to desperately come through for them. They've looked everywhere, they've tried everything, but God, they come to you and they lay their situation, their burden, their circumstance at your feet. And right now we pray that your grace would fall from heaven like never before. Give them a revelation, give them provision, give them healing in Jesus' name. Would you do it, Lord? Come on, get out of your seat right now. I want you to come to the front. Come on, you know who you are. There's multiple people in this room right now. You need the grace of your Heavenly Father. You need the provision of God the Father. You need that grace to come upon you. You don't deserve it, but you need it. You don't deserve it, but God gave it to you. Come on.